Hello and welcome to yesteryear's Mac Games, where today we're looking at the well-known retail game Theme Park World, also known as Sim Theme Park Roller Coaster, Theme Park 2001, and perhaps some other stuff on top of that. All of these different titles had different regions, but Theme Park World is the definitive name and will be used for the rest of the vid. I grew up with this game, but not the Mac version. I had it for PS1. Having had to make do with this port as a kid, it feels great playing the significantly better version for computers. So many restrictions have been lifted, with the only thing that the PS1 and 2 ports had that the PC and Macs didn't being playable minigames, which, truth be told, weren't all that good. My copy of Theme Park World is a tad worse for wear. I bought some other games from the same seller, and when this didn't sell, presumably due to its poor condition, they bundled it into the same package, which was nice of them. This is the European box art. The North American Sim Theme Park equivalent was a lot less abrasive, and looks to me to be mimicking SimCity 3000's. On the back, you build it, you ride it. Sounds vaguely threatening, like you break it, you buy it. Inside is the manual, a small addendum with Mac-specific info, and the game in a jewel case. The CD is... yeesh. That was a decision. This installs the game onto macOS 8.529, while patches downloaded from the internet make it System 10 native. Bullfrog's Theme Park World for PCs hit store shelves on November 1999. The PS1 port landed the following year in March for North America and June for Europe. Last to emerge were the ports to PS2 and Macintosh, which showed up in December 2000. Elegant Chaos were responsible for the Mac port, which was then published by Feral. Often we think that Feral and Aspire were the ones that did the porting legwork, but more often than not, they are just the publishers, with the company that did the porting hidden in the back of the manual. Anyway, between all the platforms, it shifted several million copies and received fairly solid review scores, although today it has come to represent the end of Bullfrog, both creatively and literally. Despite that, it still has a lot going for it, with a decent 3D engine, superb sound design, characterful theming, and solid, if perhaps a touch repetitive gameplay. The general premise is to open and build 4 theme parks, each one with its own theme. Prehistoric Land is principally roaring dinosaurs and Unga Bunga cavemen. Wonderland is a Pikmin-style giant garden. Halloween World is too spooky for me, and Future World is a sci-fi from the 60s. Upon booting the game, players are taken to an ocean with 4 islands, where the assistant starts talking almost immediately.
Welcome to Theme Park World. Don't I know you?
There have been assistants in previous theme games, and they returned in the 2-point games, but all of those are limited to communicating with text. In comparison, this guy's a talker. My region had Lewis McLeod on voiceover duties, while North America had Terry McGovern. I tried installing in a different language to see if they were voiced too.
Du hast da eine Attraktion, die bald den Geist aufgeben wird.
Ich nichten lichten.
Now, it's on or off for this guy. No reduced or special notifications only. If the antennae exclamation mark is activated, you'll be seeing a lot of them, and they'll be saying a lot of the same things.
Your cleaners aren't keeping the park very tidy. They would do a better job if you set their patrol areas.
Some of the lines are amusing the first and second time one hears them, and some of the ride breakdown messages sound like the announcer is trying to prevent the player from bursting into tears.
Don't be alarmed, nothing to worry about.
Other remarks are straight up peculiar.
A feature, as in, I'll just run to the feature and powder my nose.
That literally means to relieve oneself upon it.
Let's sit down on this feature and take a load of.
It's still wet. New players might find the assistant useful for half an hour or so, but the messages are also in text at the top of the walkie-talkie in the bottom left of the screen. So once one has had plenty enough of the constant nags about staff patrol areas, it's best to head straight into the options and switch it off, alongside the tutorial messages, which are also intrusive and unnecessary for anyone who's played a strategy sim before, which the announcer will also read out.
This screen lets you see the details of a toilet.
Gosh. I did see that there were some unused voice lines for when players deactivated it via constant interruptions, which would trigger some dialogue, perhaps a little ill-suited to the game's vibes.
Now you've done it, you'll have to turn me back on from the options screen. I'm perfectly happy to stay right where I am, in the dark, all by myself.
That feature didn't quite make it into the game. Lewis McLeod's best-known role, interestingly enough, is Sebulba from Star Wars Episode 1, and he would later go on to voice a couple of characters in the Planet Coaster games. Theme Park World is a direct evolution of its predecessor, Theme Park, from 1994, with specifics changing a bit, but the core of what one does remaining the same. In each stage, players plop all sorts of heavily themed rides down and link them together with path. I favoured keeping the path layout as squares, rather than one-way lines that would sometimes result from ride exits, as they tended to get clogged up with sick. Seriously, there's so much vomit, the guests can't keep anything down. Most of the rides in the game are flat rides, with a bunch of them reoccurring in multiple stages wearing a different theme. There are also a couple of roller coasters and one log flume per level, which are a bit of a fiddle to set up, but impossible to make incorrectly. Selecting a ride will reveal its stats, including the excitement rating, which will vary between the attractions, so a coaster with loops in it will be more popular than the inflatable bouncy things. With that in mind, the game's strategy guide suggests laying out all the best rides a fair distance apart from one another, with money-making shops and sideshows placed along the routes to them, as this is the best way to extract as much money as possible from the guests. This isn't so straightforward to do during early game with the fund, land and ride option limitations, but it's something to be mindful of, as a low excitement ride sat on its own won't get an awful lot of foot traffic. The guest's ability to get from one side of the park to the other isn't all that good, to the extent that I'm not even sure they consistently path to specific locations. Building a new ride will see a horde of them leg it over to where it's been plonked, but otherwise, parts of the park that are some way away from the entrance can again feel a bit empty. The amount of potential space offered in each stage is far more than the player is ever going to need, so when one runs out of new rides to research and build, the rest of the available map can feel like a bit of a waste. Buying the land is one of the main money sinks of the game. The other, annoyingly, is building tracked rides like the buggies. It costs $400 per piece, so can easily rocket past a total cost of $15,000, which seems completely disproportionate. It's much cheaper on the PlayStation version. Generating income, on the other hand, was for me mostly done through the entry tickets. Visitors arrive with a comical amount of money in their pockets, so engineering the park to efficiently relieve them of the burden of carrying it around can take a bit of finessing. A returning feature from the first game, perhaps what it was in fact best known for, are the sliders in the shops that change the food quality and amount of magic ingredient. If the guests are all having fun, then the quality can be dropped in the name of higher profit margins, while the magic ingredient can be raised to further decrease the cost, or, in the case of the salt in the fries, raise the visitor's need to buy a drink, allegedly. Hunger and thirst levels aren't visible to players, so I'm making an assumption that this happens based off of popular discourse. For the most part, I left these sliders alone, unless there was nothing else to do while I waited for the next ride to be researched. Sometimes a challenge would pop up which gives players a set amount of time to achieve a specific goal, like training staff to a particular level, selling a set number of items, or building a coaster with 3 loops in it. These are infrequent enough that when one does pop up, it feels special enough to drop everything to try and succeed at it. The cash rewards are good too. I think the main way to kill time though is to enter into first-person view and walk around the park. This view is not without its quirks. The ground here warps around, giving off a sort of quicksand vibe, and the limited angles for the pre-rendered 3D sprites of the visitors and staff can often see them pointing one way while moving another. It's really enjoyable to explore a fully built park, revelling in the sights and sounds of frivolity. It is, however, a bit of the shame that the draw distance is what it is, as the coaster tracks will not always be visible. Irrespective of this, it's a super cool feature, and child me loved running around the parks pretending to be a guest, even with the very limited PS1 graphics. Riding the rides is sometimes cool, but a lot of them tend to spin too much to really make out what's going on, and the snake slide looks like a colonoscopy. Weaker hardware isn't going to handle it well and will drop the frame rate to a slideshow. But run the game on something capable, and the roller coasters will offer up brilliant views of the park. Same goes for the flying tour rides, sans the one in Wonderland where the seating gets in the way. To keep the park running nicely, there are 5 types of staff. Guards will catch misbehaving guests and bundle them into a literal sack to turf them out the park. Entertainers will help raise visitor happiness. Researchers gradually unlock new things to build. Janitors work tirelessly to prevent the park from turning into Venice but with vomit. And the mechanics fix and upgrade rides. Usually, when a game has named staff, it's the devs' opportunity to put their own names in, or references to things. And interestingly enough, I did find some Apple-related ones. I thought that finding a researcher called Bill Atkinson might have been a coincidence, until I found another named Steve Wozniak. These don't feel like names that Bullfrog would have used. My best guess is that they were added in by Elegant Chaos during the port, but who knows. Despite it being very easy to spend all the money in the game, the overall difficulty of Theme Park World is quite low, to the extent that it's almost a sandbox. There's an additional bunch of game features for fine-tuning park operations like staff patrol areas, staff training, ride age, and visitor happiness, but interacting with these things is not really needed to get through the game. It takes a couple of hours to research and build everything in a park, and once that's happened, money starts to stack up and becomes more or less irrelevant. A player could then fire their researchers and fine-tune their park design without limitations, before uploading their perfect arrangement to the Theme Park World servers for others to check out. Now, if anyone has any first-hand experience of Theme Park Online, please let us know about it in the comments, as the servers for publishing and exploring parks are of course long gone, as well as the ability to download extra rides that were made available through this service. Thankfully, these were not lost, as the downloadable rides were later made available in a Theme Park World Gold re-release for PCs. I was curious to see if the .wad ride files from this would be OS agnostic, and so popped them into my install, and well, hey, they work! So I've zipped these up and added them to the archive sites for download alongside the game. There's extra rides, features, and a few sideshows in here, none of which need researching, so are particularly helpful at the start of a park. Overall, I think the best part of Theme Park World is sitting back and drinking in the theme park that one has made, in both first-person and top-down views. Even without elevation, different sections of park themed differently, different types of roller coasters, and the limited shop diversity, the scenes played out here still look and sound busy and fun. The atmosphere that the game creates is cartoonish, but quite infectious. The rides all make noise, so do some of the sideshows. You can hear the guests enjoying themselves, being sick, and lament a ride breaking down, which I thought was a good touch. Music is also dynamic, with the area's theme only properly getting going once the park has been built up a bit. Another good touch. Other parts of the game miss the mark a bit. Gameplay doesn't offer much of a challenge, as the business simulation elements are very simple. There are no scenarios, as the 4 themed areas all play the same. There's a few obstacles in the maps, but aside from those, the terrain is featureless, and after a few hours of playing a stage, one can run out of things to do. These shortcomings are certainly obvious today when compared with modern games, but unluckily for Bullfrog, the phenomenal roller coaster tycoon from Chris Sawyer launched a few months before Theme Park World, which will have made these issues apparent back in 1999. This genre is like a bus. Wait 5 years for a new game after Theme Park, and then suddenly 2 come along at once. Theme Park World has features that Roller Coaster Tycoon does not, but such is the excellence of RCT, they are rendered completely moot. It doesn't matter that one can ride the rides in a 3D engine. Look at the complexity of this coaster, and then these other ones, all of completely different types. Given the option then, the more serious looking Roller Coaster Tycoon was the better choice for PC gamers, and it would play on very modest hardware. As a youngster, I had a compact with a 486, which ran it flawlessly. What it couldn't do, however, is run on PlayStations and Macs, so Theme Park World had those platforms all to itself, which will have helped sales numbers. Those were high enough to warrant an, in my opinion, wholly unnecessary sequel a couple of years later called Theme Park Incorporated, or Sim Roller Coaster, which addressed World's lack of business simulation, but it wasn't really good enough to keep the franchise or Bullfrog alive any further, which had been slowly degrading through Theme Park World's development as the culture got EA'd and the talent went elsewhere. After Theme Park Incorporated, what was left of Bullfrog was folded into the rest of EA UK. And that was the end of that. The nostalgic can still run Theme Park World on modern PCs after applying a few patches, while those that wish to play it on old computers can find downloads of the game on the abandonware websites. Boxed copies of all versions are cheap, although the Mac port is much harder to come by. I'm not sure what a newcomer would make of the game, but as a returning player from many years ago, I've had a lot of fun revisiting this. Let me know your thoughts and memories of the game in the comments. Which was the best out of the 4 parks? And did you have a preferred way to lay everything out? But that then will do for this edition of YYsMG. For more content on old games for Mac, check out the rest of my channel, and be sure to subscribe to keep on top of future videos. Thanks for watching then, and see you next time.